Well, I think that the threat is very real. And in fact, I think it's probably more likely than not that we are headed to a government shutdown. Talks haven't completely stalled, but there's certainly a huge gulf, I think, in terms of what Democrats and Republicans are asking for, both in the House as well as the Senate. So more and more, I think Washington is certainly bracing for this federal government shutdown. Wouldn't be the first time. And I think the real question then becomes, how long does it last? And are these two sides able to come together?
Yeah, it is interesting this time round because, of course, it almost has been held ransom by this rather small group of ultra-right-wing Republicans who have a lot of weight, political weight, over a much bigger and broader group of politicians.
That's right. And this has been a theme that we have been seeing for quite some time. Kevin McCarthy, who is the Speaker of the House of Representatives and is a Republican, can only afford to lose 4 votes. And there are more members of this hardline fiscal hawk group than that. And they've essentially said, look, we don't want to continue to finance the government at levels that we just think are contributing to ever escalating deficits. And they have an enormous amount of clout, even though it's a relatively small number. They've even threatened to take away Kevin McCarthy's job if he decides to compromise with Democrats. So Kevin McCarthy is in a very difficult spot right now, kind of a no-win situation.
Yes, and it almost looks like he is trying to be reasonable to some degree. I noticed, though, that the issue of the ongoing funding of the Ukraine war, their war effort, has become an increasingly contentious issue, and this could be very much tied to whether this debt ceiling is raised, whether the defence spending is raised.
Absolutely. So in the short term, the Pentagon does plan to protect funding to Ukraine from a potential government shutdown, even if lawmakers can't reach an agreement by the end of the month. So that exemption will basically enable essential training and support for Ukraine's forces to continue without interruption, which would, ensure continuity in their operations. But in terms of aid to keep going forward, a really significant point of contention here is whether to add additional funding to that support. In the Senate, for example, there's a debate about whether to include up to $25 billion in new aid to Ukraine within a legislation known as a continuing resolution. But there's a lot of resistance to that. And even if it was passed in the Senate, it would probably face stiff opposition in the House. So it's a big issue right now.
Yeah. Tell me, Thomas, what do you make of Senator Bob Menendez? I mean, he's facing very serious corruption allegations, yet he's been quite defiant about resigning.
Yeah, I mean, $400,000 money stuffed in, couches and clothes and gold bars. It certainly doesn't look good. I mean, everyone is innocent until proven guilty. But I think the real question will be how far fellow Democrats are willing to go in terms of supporting him. The indictment is just the first step. He insists that he's not only going to be exonerated, but by the end of it, he's going to remain the senior senator from New Jersey. But, this is an individual who has faced a number of allegations of corruption in the past. And certainly these current allegations are very, very serious about selling state secrets to Egypt in his capacity as head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. So we'll have to see how the evidence stacks up. But right now, it certainly doesn't look good for him.
No, it doesn't. And I noticed, too, that quite a number of Democrats, high-profile Democrats, have actually urged him to resign, which kind of contrasts with what happened has happened on the Republican side.
That's right. I mean, you're seeing somewhat of a mixed response, I think, so far from Democrats. Some, like Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman, have been very outspoken, asking Senator Menendez to resign, but others have sort of taken a let's wait and see approach. But certainly, when you contrast that across the aisle with all the defenses that Republicans have given, for example, to Donald Trump, even amid 91 indictments, it does seem like quite a stark difference.
Yeah. It's interesting to see that the Supreme Court will be meeting for a private meeting ahead of a new term. I mean, in the last month, the ethical issues raised around several of its members are hard to ignore. Are they going to finally look at some rules to bind them to ethical behaviour?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, especially when you're talking about Clarence Thomas and allegations of, receiving all kinds of gifts. It certainly doesn't look good. So far, they've really resisted oversight from the Congress, saying that they're able to police themselves. But in terms of the Supreme Court's legitimacy, it really requires that it has sort of public faith and trust in it. And part of that is thinking that these judges are upstanding and they're abiding by basic kind of ethics and rules. So I think that the Supreme Court certainly has to do something. But whether we're actually going to know about that and what that something is going to be, I think it's a big question mark at this point.
Yeah, you'd think it'd be one area where there should be complete transparencies, but an interesting one. Great to have you on, Thomas. Thanks so much.
Thank you.